Welcome to a slightly medicated, sick and feeble version of the weekly live reaction to Carole Tuesday, the Shinichiro Watanabe show about music that we sometimes talk about when we talk about music. And without further ado, let's get started. Week 10. We know what happened in week 9. There was a little talent show, and now we're on to the semifinals. Sibel is a weird, creepy person. She bites people for no particular reason. So without further ado, let's get started.
その原動力となった二人の少女の物語である。
So looking back at this theater scene for the first time, we can kind of see that the theater looks very similar to the theater that we see in Mars Brightest. So I'm wondering if it's not going to be the finals of the show, which they keep talking about as being Mars's miraculous 7 minutes. It would be interesting to see if that was the case, because this is supposed to be a 2-core show and we're only on episode 10. And if it was to happen in episode 12 or 13, for example, there would be another 11 episodes that we'd have to deal with after that happened. So I'd be curious to see if that's the case or if it's something completely different. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something completely different, just because we're not really that much into the show yet. But other than that, yeah, this auditorium looks similar. That's the only thing that's leading me to that conclusion. Let's keep going. Oh no. He's kind of decided that these girls are his personal enemy, so I'm curious to see how this turns out. He seems to be a nice guy. Like, he deals with Roddy like he's a nice guy, so there's nothing like particularly wrong about him. It's just that he's decided these girls will not make it in the music industry if he has anything to say about it, which is of course worrying because these are our main characters. Let's see what happens. The way they've dealt with the Sibel character has been somewhat strange. Like, she just shows up, she does some weird stuff. She kind of like weirdly assaults Tuesday last episode, and then this episode she just up and leaves for no reason. I'm curious to like why they chose to do this. Is she going to make a comeback at some point? Is there going to be like some redemption arc with her? Because she really wasn't in the spotlight for that long. Maybe like 2 episodes or 2.5 episodes at the max. So is this some like just random like throwaway character that just added for a subplot while the talent show goes on, or is it more like they actually had something meaningful to do with her and that involves her coming back? It's really hard to tell at this point. We're still very early in the show, only 10 episodes in. But I didn't really like the way they handled her. Like, they didn't really say anything about, like, her actions don't really speak to any like previous motivation. Like, for example, if they had shown her being a fan of Carole Tuesday before she showed up on the show at all, or like she was associated with Angela in some way and we know her from that leaning, or like just we had any knowledge of this character before this arc started, I would be more invested in her as a character, first of all, and second of all, like I would understand where she was coming from when she crushes on Tuesday like this and like stalks off all stalkery. But as of right now, I can't really relate to that in any meaningful sense. So it's hard for me to take her like rejection hard, and as well as her exit, because she doesn't really mean anything at this current point. I don't know if she's going to mean anything in the future. We haven't really had that many returning characters that show up as one-offs, so I'm guessing not, but maybe, we don't know. Okay, just a quick off comment. When that dude is like, oh, no cameras back here, so I have to stream in secret, it just reminded me of Casey Neistat does that at every event where they tell him no cameras. Like, whenever he does a movie shoot or something, like a cameo in a movie or whatever, he just takes his camera and streams from the one place they do let him stream, and it makes it look really organic and kind of like unplanned. But actually, he had to ask permission to do that, because those Hollywood sets are super strict about what goes on down there, so he can't just take his camera and show up on set and start filming, because like they will remove him from set physically if he did that. So just like this Piotr guy, like he shows up in the back and picks up his camera, but if you think like along the lines of what an influencer would do in this world, it makes sense that they want him to do that because it brings more attention to their program. I just thought that was funny.
俺の中のアーティガンの声さ。それではそろそろ歌ってもらおう。
So she has this like long and extended backstory about like her finding the universe or whatever. Clearly, it's a play on these like sob stories or like inspirational stories that they have on these talent shows where they're like, oh, look at this person, they're in a wheelchair, or like they're a double amputee and they're doing all this. That means you can do it too. Like the whole point of it is to like, it's not about their talent at all, it's about their story. And here we have an example of that where her music may be good or not, but like they're really trying to sell her story as the like cover, like charge of admission type thing. That's what gets you in the door with her. And it's interesting that they chose to do that because she's kind of an interesting character. She's being made to sing by the universe, which, you know, just off the top of my head, just creative idea, first of all. And the next thing is they're like really hyping up the fact that she's that because they've mentioned it. Like she said it in the previous episode, she's saying it again this episode. And it's not like we forgot about it. They're just reminding the in-world audience about it again and again. So that's interesting. I like to, because Angela has a similar story, right? She's there because she's an already known person. And it just so happened that she was one of the 8 selected out of like thousands who applied. Is it just because she's the most talented, like one of the most talented 8 among those thousands? Or is it more like she's famous and we need her on our show? To me, it seems like it's the second one. And what's even more cynical than that is Carole Tuesday aren't even one of the most top 8 most talented because they were also known. They were part of a viral video. So if you've seen like any one of these rappers with the new dances go on Ellen, it's kind of like that. Like she doesn't care about the music. She wants to do the dance because that gets her ratings, right? In a similar way, we have it right here. Carole Tuesday, they don't really care about their music. They're more interested in the virality of the video that they put out. And they're trying to exploit that for their own show because their show can't do that by itself. It needs to have external, like, you know, stuff provided to it for it to be able to go viral like that. So there's that. We're not told any of this. I'm just putting this together from in-world logic. It makes sense because this show is like, we've already been told it's super cynical, and Angela just got through the top 8 with no meaningful attempt at participation. So just thought that I would say that. I might be being too cynical, and it might just be a sincere story about music and like grassroots movements against AIs, but to me, that's what it looks like. This is good. They're actually doing what I suggested they do in the previous episode. I said when someone's performing, they should cut to like see other scenes happening that are of interest to the audience, because we don't really care that much about the musical performance because we only really care about 2 of them. One is Angela, one is Carole Tuesday. If they're not the ones performing, we don't really care that much just because they haven't put the time into the other characters to make us invested in that yet. So they're doing that. Good job, show.
それが私にとって音楽だったの。
なかなか積極的な女性のようだ。悪くないね。
Every time she opens her mouth, I just relate to her more and more. Like, she seems to be like way more proactive and like involved in her choices than Carole Tuesday. And this is probably just me praising the show because they've done such a good job like portraying this kind of cold, calculated move into music as like a warm one, because that's what they want us to think, or that's what they want the people of the world to think. But I've totally bought into this hook, line, and sinker, this Angela narrative. Her song from last episode is probably my favorite of the whole show so far. You can think of that what you will. But she's like my favorite character in the show right now. To anyone who listens to like modern radio pop, this should sound very familiar to you because I think it's basically just a copy paste from whatever they're using to make modern radio pop these days. Think of that what you will. They're doing it again where they're cutting between his performance and like scenes of them trying to find Carole Tuesday, and just like I said, it was super effective. Now, if they were saving that for this episode, I'm not doing it in the previous episode just to make a point about it, then I'm fine with it. But if they just introduced it in this episode because they didn't want to show any more musical performances, because they have been cutting down on the length of them lately. GGK's was pretty short. Angela's, even though we saw the whole thing, was pretty short. They seem to be cutting down on it and focusing more on other stuff, which I'm perfectly fine with because it is a show at the end of the day. It's not a music video. We do have to like be invested in the characters and whatnot. Pyotr as a person, clearly he's all about this like message of self-love. Like you can probably refer to like 10 or 15 celebrities who preach this currently and are all about like loving yourself, accepting yourself. But when he does it, it comes off like a parody just because of who he is as a person, who's like this shameless Instagram type influencer. And again, this is just me being super cynical, because the people who see this as a genuine expression are probably going to be like, yeah, he's this guy who's all like, you know, he couldn't find his own place in the world and he found it on the internet and people liked him for who he was, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to who are watching this video. Because participating in this kind of episode by episode weekly discussion anime community is definitely a way to find people on the internet. It's interesting to see just how they portrayed him, because at first he was just like an Instagram influencer, but they're kind of showing that there's more depth to him, or at least that he's pretending to have more depth to him, because this is like a cynical talent show at the end of the day. I might be reading more into it than really what exists, which is, you know, like that's what I specialize in doing at this point. But he seems to be really into this narrative of like, I found this place. And the judges seem to be buying into it too, which is really what's important at the end of the day, because they decide who moves on and who doesn't. It'd be interesting to see like whether Carole Tuesday can actually end up beating him and what song they pick. It should have some thematic resonance to the whole plight that they've been going through with Sibel. Let's see what she actually ended up doing with Tuesday. So that was episode 10 of Carole Tuesday. Interesting episode, to say the least. They really picked up the pace from where we were last episode, which makes sense because we're leading into the like halfway run point of the show. We're episode 10 episodes in, and at this point, we've gotten to the point where we already know who the characters are. We know what they want to do. And we're kind of in this in-between spot where we're doing this like mid-season talent show arc, which is going to end in episode 12, I presume, when they like make it to the final and either win or don't. It's going to be the final showdown between them and Angela. So I'm wondering where the show's going to go after that, which makes me like doubt whether this is a 2-course show at all, or whether it is just a 1-course show. When I did my like preview show, I remember this being a 2-course show. That's why I've been talking about it like that, and no one's corrected me yet, so I just assume I'm right. It's just weird that they chose to do 2 cores of it, which may then again, going back to the cynical brain, which then leads me to believe that it was a Netflix decision. It was like, oh, we need 2 cores of the show. Like, we're paying you this much money, we're producing it, we're putting it up in Japan first, and then it's going to be on Netflix. We need 24 episodes. We can't do it with 12. I think that's just like being kind of practical, because most people, when they start watching a show and they get into it, they don't want to just be done with it like a few episodes later. It seems to me like if you really like a show, like I've been watching anime on the TV more recently, and you like get into this binge mode where you just keep watching shows over and over, and as the episodes go by, you're like, oh, I wish there were more than 12 episodes. Like, I wish someone had approved a second season of this or something similar to that. So Netflix is probably facing a similar problem, because when they're only 20-minute episodes, like 22-minute episodes, and you only have 24 of them, that's like 8 hours worth of content, whereas like a 10 to 13 episode like TV drama would be like 13 hours worth of content. And the budget may not be like the same. Like, this might be more expensive than that just because animation is so expensive. But like, I mean, there is some like impressive animation in the show. That was more towards the beginning of the show, I feel, to like get people on the hook. And that might be a Netflix model too. It might be like, once you get people on the hook, they're going to watch the show through to the end anyway. So if you blow your budget on the first couple of episodes to really impress people, then they'll stay for the end, no matter how, you know, how much less money you spend on the end. Can you tell I'm super sick and cynical today? Yeah, definitely. So this show, episode 10, the finals, we're going to finally see that clash we've been looking forward to since episode 1, when they introduced us to Angela and Carole Tuesday. We'll see who eventually wins. To me, I'm more invested in the Angela arc by far than either of Carole or Tuesday, just because I feel like she's overcome more, and we've kind of learned more about the struggle she's had than Carole and Tuesday have had. I kind of wish they'd gone more into that at this point, but again, if it is a 2-course show, there's more time for them to do so. So yeah, interesting episode 10. It kind of upped the pace a little bit, which I like to see, because the last couple of episodes I thought were dragging. We're 2 episodes away from the mid-season point, at which point I assume we'll know more than we do now. This is an interesting way to do this, or to have this battle take place, because there's really no other way you could have done it than to have a talent show, because music is not like an objective medium, it's a subjective medium. So you really need some outside party to decide who's better. And this was an interesting way to go about that. I'm fine with that, but the other parts of the talent show arc I'm not really that impressed with. But I'm still enjoying the show overall. I think it's still kind of lighthearted and like well-paced for the most part, and the animation is still good and the character designs are still enjoyable. So for all those reasons, I'm still into the show. I just wish they would do a little bit more with the premise that they've given themselves. So that's it for this week. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next episode.